So, it's really hot here, so excuse any nasty sweaty forehead. I should really be doing this in the studio, but you'll find out by the end why I'm not. It's quite frustrating, but it's not all bad because it's actually made me decide on a direction for this channel just before I start, really. Well, this video is about a project that I started to try and rekindle, I don't know, the creative flame. It had been sputtering ever since March 2020 and over all of those periods of lockdown that we've all endured. As a documentary landscape photographer, I lost in my will to get my gear out, and nearly sold up, actually. I'll go into that later. So yeah, I decided I would try and fake it till I make it, because I wasn't feeling it at all, and if I didn't do something, then it was all going to fade away. So maybe, just maybe, if this is you as well, and I think I can't be the only one, then it might spark something in you. I'm not saying copy this, but this has helped me. Well, I'll start at the beginning. 30 years ago, I graduated from a very, very good photography school. And art school is a wonderful thing. For the right kind of person, it can be a wonderful thing. It can open up a world of potential and possibility, and it did that for me. It really did. However, there are some things that I think, for the wrong kind of person, also me, it can have a detrimental effect on your work once you leave. And one of those things, I think, was the practice of crits. And for those that don't know, a crit it's the practice of putting your work up on a wall in amongst your classroom of uni mates, uni colleagues, and they've all put their work up on the wall again, and you all take turns at criticising each other's work. And generally it's meant to be a very objective thing, but if you do that every week in and out for years, which we did, you end up overthinking things. And certainly I know that over the years I have talked myself out of many more projects than I've finished. So day 3, I'm still enjoying the process. Very, very different from the last couple of days. It's raining quite heavily today, so I'm to be a bit more careful about my kit. Getting this camera wet for sure. I'm just cheating a little bit. I'm walking back to where I went for day 1. There's another subject there that I want to do, so I'll do that in a sec. So you kind of get paralysed by overthink, I think, and that word paralysis, that's going to pop up a few times, and not unironically by the end as well. On top of that, you've got choice paralysis, and this is, I admit, contradictory, but when I do end up getting out there, I almost always come back with hundreds, if not thousands, of exposures when a tenth of them is all I needed. And you've got this psychological furniture of digital photography, chimping and bracketing and holding down the shutter button to fire off 20 shots in 2 seconds to make sure you get the perfect shot. These things do have their place, mostly in commercial work. But I found that it just put obstacles in the way of me making work. I cannot stand sifting through 2,000 images to get to the 20 that I really like. It's the opposite of intentional photography. Well, because it's so wet, I've done my 10 minutes out from my house actually, and I'm going to look for somewhere to photograph somewhere nearby, because I'm getting soaked. So we'll see how we go. I think it comes from all photographers. I think it comes from outside of commercial work, but even with commercial work actually, I think it comes from anxiety, a kind of FOMO, a fear of missing out, fear of missing that perfect shot. And what it leads to is it erodes trust in your own skill set. I've come to firmly believe that. And so, okay, flaming pigeons everywhere. Let's get this done. Oh boy! For me, I was taught to be an intentional photographer. I learned photography in the film world, and I was taught by some of the best exponents of it at the time. And yeah, I have come to realise that digital fosters that kind of behaviour. I think it's entirely possible to be an intentional photographer digitally, and I intend to be. But I am definitely moving back to film as well as maintaining my digital practice, because I feel like I need that. I need there to be a more intentional mindset, and I'm hoping that will foster it. So yeah, so there's this kind of digital choice paralysis. Nick Carver actually talks very eloquently about this, talks about how digital dammed up and created that. Every time he made a digital image, it kind of added to the dam that was in his way, got in his way from his love of photography, and it was going back to film that kind of opened things up again. And yeah, I'm the same. I very, very nearly gave up on it all. I'd lost enthusiasm for it. And yeah, so there's this idea of choice paralysis in there as well. Let me put it this way. If Adobe feel the need to build an AI tool to sift through all of your digital images to tell you which ones are the best ones, there's something wrong with your practice. So many cars. The weather's making this every day in July thing quite difficult. It's it's not stopped raining, but it's just calmed down. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but there's a heron out there. I'll stop, let's see if he... I'm not sure the resolution will really pick him up, but he's really cool. If I was using a different camera with a longer lens, I might take a shot. But that's not what this is about. So we've got digital paralysis, we've got paralysis through overthink, and finally there was lockdown paralysis. So, well, not quite finally, but next there was lockdown paralysis. I can't be the only one who felt like this, kind of hemmed in to your house. We have over there a wonderful coastal path called the Fife Coastal Path, but points of it are much less than a metre wide, and certainly Scottish Government guidance was for it, yeah, must maintain 2 metres social distancing or wear a mask. I didn't mention indoors or outdoors, so that never happened really. So eventually myself and other members of my family started to feel quite unsafe, and certainly even just getting, you know, nasty stares and things like that when you're wearing a mask outdoors. It was enough to eventually persuade me just to stay indoors. So I was kind of hemmed in by all of that. Not to mention the fact that I personally don't find the area I live in particularly photographically stimulating. So as a documentary landscape photographer, not being able to get further afield pretty much ended things for me at that point. Also worth bearing in mind that I have, and it's going to be part of, a very small part, but part of the point of this channel, I have chronic illness. So I have chronic fatigue, I have fibromyalgia, and that affects a lot of the choices I make, from putting myself at risk, going down to narrow paths, to the gear I choose to take with me, because I can't really carry very heavy gear anymore. So all of these things, particularly during lockdown, they had a massive effect on everything, and so I ended up being kind of paralysed by the pandemic as well. So far, 3 types of paralysis. I came very close to selling my gear. I was looking on eBay to see what prices I could get, what the latest sales were getting for my kind of gear. And bear in mind, I mean, the thing I'm filming this on is an XT4. I was thinking of selling that. And, you know, I was at that point where I was ready to hang it all up. So, looks like I've got basically a really interesting fallen over tree trunk. Oh, it's actually quite warm. Get away. So maybe, just maybe, you might find this project interesting if you were going through a similar thought process. I'm not saying follow these specific rules, but these are the rules that I set out to kind of gamify things. As an aside, I'm a gamer, so the idea of turning this into a game isn't particularly groundbreaking, but it made things fun. Trying to stick to those rules simplified things, and I'm a great believer that restricting yourself when you're working on these kind of projects can lead to more creativity, actually. So that's what I did. I set out some rules. The first one was get out and make images every day. No preciousness, no pressure, nothing like that. Not even an overarching subject, just play. And actually no pressure to post it either, although I did post these on Instagram. And that was quite fun because I hadn't done that for a while. I mean, it wasn't really a rule as such, it was more the whole damn point. But, you know, that was rule one. The main rules, rule two, I had to walk at least 10 minutes before I could get my camera out, and then I could focus on one subject. That was mainly, oh my god, you've gotten big rule. That wasn't really a photography rule as such. But I had lost an awful lot of fitness, and the idea was that I needed to get out and about and walk. And so I added this rule in as a way to help with that. And yeah, it kind of worked for me. So hot. Yeah, so that didn't go too well, medium format wise. We'll call that the test day. So first thing that happened this morning was I actually couldn't see the frame numbers through the little red window on the back of the Perkio because I was trying to do it in low light because I wasn't sure about low light leaks, and I ended up just winding the film all the way to the end. Oh, this is bad. Damn it. So that's one film rolled down. And then I was actually quite enjoying myself. I was bracketing because I'm still not sure of exposures, whether the shutter speeds are correct and all that kind of stuff. So I was really only taking 4 images and bracketing either way for each one. But I was getting set up, and these two nice people came up and asked me about the island that was across the way. And I forgot to focus. So they're going to be blurry because it's basically focused at 1 foot away. It's amazing how easy photography is now. The X100V is an amazing piece of kit. And honestly, I mean, I've got a kind of infinite feedback loop going on with the hybrid practice. 3, I had to make 12 exposures. No more, no less, and that seems small enough to be utterly trivial. And so there's no friction in actually going and making those images. But actually, by the time you get to your 12th image of one subject, you're starting to have to work quite a bit to see something new in it. So it's actually quite a good number. Plus, there's the old Ansel Adams quote: 12 images in any 1 year is a good crop. I quite like that. So I quite like the idea of 12 images for. Apologies for the barking in the background. Not much I can do about that. But yeah, I quite like the idea of 12 images for projects, small projects. Rule 4, gear consistency. I just stuck to my Fuji X100V just to keep things nice and simple. Didn't have to think about focal length. I didn't have to think about much at all. I just grabbed my camera and got out. And so, again, removing friction. Almost all of these rules are about removing friction. Also, there's an element of visual consistency with it as well, in terms of the same focal length every single time. And again, that worked well. It kept it nice and simple. 5, I'm not sure this was as successful, to be honest, as a rule, but I decided I was going to stick to straight out of camera JPEGs because I felt like that would remove more friction and minimise on editing time. Turned out not to be the case. Yeah, one thing I learned was that I'm not a fan of JPEG profiles in cameras. I prefer to do my own thing. So yeah, that one, I mean, I liked a couple of the Fuji profiles. Eterna was a particular favourite. But generally, I actually felt it too restrictive. I'd rather create my own look, and I'd rather have been shooting raw. But I stuck to it. And the final rule, rule 6, was square format. I'm an ex-twin lens reflex, Hasselblad, Mamiya 6MF owner. I kind of think in square format when I'm pre-visualizing images. So it was a kind of no-brainer, although I do admit Instagram had a little bit of an influence on that, and that's probably quite telling on the world of photography as well. Also, there was a little bit of a... I wanted to try out medium format film. I just got myself an old 1950s Perkio, and I was going to try that, so I wanted some kind of visual consistency there. That didn't end up working out, but you know. And those are the 6 rules. They actually really helped me. I'm not suggesting that you copy them. I do suggest that you try and figure out where your own friction comes from, though, and come up with some rules that remove those particular frictions. That's the point, is find ways to remove friction to allow you to get on with your practice. So in practice, how did that all work? Well, I mean, it did work. It gave me a reason to get out. I had no friction, apart from lots and lots of buzzies on a couple of occasions when I went out. That nearly stopped me from taking photographs. But it worked. I got out most days, except for a lightning day. Actually, today's forecast to be lightning as well, so that's going to be interesting. Quite early on, I started to relish actually going out with the camera, which I hadn't done for a good couple of years. I actually had creative block before I started, because I just finished a major project, and I was really struggling. Just about coming out of that phase as lockdown started, so it was pretty bad luck on my part. I felt like the 12 images thing was perfect, and actually it helped me start thinking about telling a story each time I went out. So tell the story of an object or a thing or whatever it was, or the place. I had 12 images to start establishing a kind of narrative, and that was quite fun to work through. It quite often resulted in only one image being one I liked, but actually the process of working up to that image was quite fun, and that's something I hadn't done for quite a while, largely because of the scattergun approach of digital photography and forcing myself, restricting myself to 12 images was quite good. Don't think I would restrict myself to 12 again, but I certainly wouldn't use the old scattergun approach again, like a little machine gun that gathers light. I didn't really feel restricted, actually. I just kind of felt guided by those rules. But by the end, I kind of felt hemmed in by the lack of substance in my work. Because effectively these were fun snaps. And I prefer to work on more substantial things. I'll work in big bursts and then stop and go again. And I started to feel the urge to focus more on a single subject rather than finding a new one every day. But that's actually a sign that it worked. I think I went from not wanting to pick up my camera to starting to work to wanting to start to work on bigger projects. So I think that's a massive win, actually. However, by the last few days, I think the biggest problem was actually with the chronic illness that I mentioned before. Pacing is something that I should have been doing, and I was actually forcing myself to get out every day, regardless of how I felt. And anyone who has any experience with chronic fatigue at all knows that's a bad idea. So pacing is key, and I didn't pace. By the last couple of days, I could barely put one foot in front of the other when I was walking up the hills and stuff. And then, just about a week and a bit ago, I had a suspected mini stroke, which kind of paid to the whole thing. Important thing is, I'm okay now, but I woke up one morning after having been particularly exhausted, after a relatively short walk actually with the camera. It was going to be, I'd already decided that was going to be the last day, and woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning with my right arm completely paralysed. Only lasted for 5 minutes. It wasn't because I slept on it, because I was on my other arm. And yeah, so I ended up in the TIA clinic, they call it here, Transient Ischemic Attack Clinic, and got told that I'm not allowed to drive for 4 weeks, which is why I'm here, not in the studio. And yeah, they did tests, and all the tests I've done have come back fine. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong. Got an MRI scan in a week and a half. But the point is that that's a real illustration of what it is to try and maintain a creative life when you have a chronic illness. It's actually what it is to maintain any kind of life when you have a chronic illness. You have to plan ahead, you have to pace yourself, and you have to be flexible and be prepared for your plans to get smashed to smithereens and be able to carry on regardless once things settle down again. It's one of the harder things about this whole thing is maintaining this kind of creative life, trying to make new contacts, new friends, new collaborators, whilst at the same time knowing that at some point you might have to let them down because you're ill or whatever. So yeah, the whole project in the end ended up for me being an illustration of the things I should have done to keep going with chronic fatigue. I'm not saying that pushing when my body was telling me to stop caused a stroke. I think that's probably unrelated, but it's certainly an illustration of what having this kind of condition is like. And as a result, I've changed the name of my channel. It's now Chronically Photographic, and this channel will be partially about trying to keep a photography career going with chronic illness, which an awful lot of you out there must have, just by sheer numbers. I know that there's a lot of creatives out there trying to keep pushing on through this kind of thing. So while it's not going to be the primary focus is going to be about my work, my art. Some of it will be about the choices I make, the gear I use, all of those kind of things, to help keep producing work when your body's telling you you can't. So anyway, I hope you felt like that was an informative, and I'm not sure it would be fun, but a reasonably entertaining video. Yeah, I hope you like the images, and I'll be posting more again soon. Stay safe, stay well, like and subscribe, and bye.